Welcome back to the Whiskey Wisdom Podcast, everybody. This is your co-host, Tyler Y'all, and today I am with...
Chris Kellum.
And our special guest today is...
Cameron Smith.
Thank you so much for coming on, Cameron.
Thank you for having me.
And Chris, before we get too far into our guest for the day, what are we sipping on?
It is a fancy concoction. I walked up to Brent and was like, hey, I need a bright whiskey cocktail. And he was like...
Then I walked up and I was like, whiskey is brown. But he did a good job. It actually looks like a very nice summer cocktail.
Yes. It's using that triple berry shrub that we used a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So get it while you can. It is very tart, very clean. I feel like it is definitely, for those who think on a similar wavelength, it is very September, where it's bright but still has a nice like kick to it. Maybe one day I'll find somebody else who thinks like I do.
I mean, I catch on for the most part because like there's definitely like I'm not drinking an old fashioned during the summer.
True. But a paper plane is also a little too... I am fucked up if I drink more than one paper plane or a paper constellation.
Do you ever think, psh, psh, psh?
Yes,
Okay.
Every single time. You know that's where the name came from. Like the drink
Really?
made its like inception after that song came out.
Interesting.
I got bored and looked into that. Don't know why, but because the constellation from Starling is a riff off of the paper plane.
That makes sense. Just like Josh's had a couple of weeks back. If you know, you know.
Yes. But yeah, shout out. I know you're drinking some good water.
Yep.
I wonder, do they do like double osmosis? Does it taste different?
It does taste clean. It does not taste like this is pure tap. I don't know if we could find that
Not Gen
out.
X water around
Oh,
here.
Put it in the show notes, maybe.
We should.
That
just
actually
kidding.
probably be smart for us.
I
but-
feel like every place in the cargo district does like that double filter, like to make it healthy.
Yeah.
If you actually just want water.
And this water tastes really smooth and thick, so I'm thinking maybe it's even alkaline where they're adding some minerals to it. I'm kind of a water snob, but I mean this passes.
So what do you think
Passes
about
test.
Fiji water?
Fiji. I like Fiji.
Mm-hmm.
What's the other ones I like? I actually like Core water.
Okay.
Okay, I can deal with core.
What's the
Piana is my favorite. The orange bottle.
Have you
Oh yeah, or I also love Aquapana. That's maybe my
Okay,
favorite
yeah.
right now, and I can't remember the one. I think it starts with an E, but it's usually they shape their bottles
Evian?
like Evian.
Yes.
shape
Yeah.
their bottles like a glacier.
I can't.
Voss. That's another good one.
Right, yeah.
Voss is a good one. Have you had just water? The one that's
I
like,
have
the box?
The box water.
Yeah.
yeah.
I haven't had that one yet.
I was dying laughing because I was at Childish Gambino, and his
That's where
opening
you're
act.
at. I'm so fucking jealous now.
It's such a good concert.
Damn.
But his opening act was
Dino
Willow.
is a master. Sorry.
And for those who don't, it's Willow Smith. And her brother, Jaden, invested in the box water.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, that's why she's just chilling up here with, like, she just picked it up and was like drinking out of it. I'm like, at least you
Product
support your
placement.
brother and didn't
Right.
just like go like, hey, let me just get some water in a cup out here.
Dude, it would be my dream to be sponsored by a water company.
Right.
That'd be
Liquid
so-
Death is doing some
Are they
pretty
sponsoring
legit.
stuff?
That's also
Oh yeah,
good
there was
water.
actually someone local that got sponsored by Liquid Death. I forget who.
I'm going to need someone to put us in contact with that. I would.
All right.
Yes, we're a bourbon podcast. So if you know somebody who could hook us up, like we'd love to make connections, like a bourbon rep, hit us up.
Liquid Death rep.
You know, I'm just saying. But before we go too crazy down the food and water line, because we're not talking about former pizza joints that people worked at, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name's Cameron. I'm responsible for the Wilmington water filtration system. I'm an artist local here to Wilmington. Mostly do stand-up comedy, music, and film. And I just recently finished a documentary called The Loneliest Boy on Earth, which is a documentary about how I'm terrible at romance and I'm not good around women, really. It's a whole documentary about that.
Don't worry, I'm not good around men either. So
Yeah, there's people in the movie that claim I'm just not good around people, which might be true. I just feel I'm particularly bad around women. Like, you think this is bad, just wait till you get a woman in here and I'll shut down.
So
We need to get Branday on here on a podcast, all of us together. We had a woman on who wrote the book on dating in Wilmington.
we're
Oh, really?
a book
Yeah.
on dating.
Well, yeah.
I don't
a
think
book.
she's dated everybody in town yet.
She never got around to me, that's for sure.
Right.
Might be too young.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. How old are you?
29.
Yeah, you're
possibly.
past the threshold.
Oh, okay.
You got to hit at least 30.
To date her? To date her?
No, like
Chris is just making stuff up now. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So he's just
that was a running joke. I had a friend, and every time I'd be like, "Oh, who are you dating?" Like, if she wasn't dating someone her age, she was always dating a 27-year-old. And I was like, "What? How does that?" She's like, "No, that's the good age."
We just don't do that.
If it's not gonna be a legit relationship, why not date a 27-year-old?
Yeah, I suppose.
So tell us a little bit more about kind of how that documentary got started, how you got the idea to do it, and just kind of like the process of working through it.
Yeah.
Well, so I've been working on it since September of 2022.
Okay.
And I think for years leading up to that, like the last film I made, it was this 5-hour art house film.
Oh, wow.
I made in 2018. And since then, I'd had the idea, I think the next film I want to do is a documentary. And I kind of wanted to do it about myself, but it was like, that on its own is just flat narcissistic. And I was just like, it has to be an angle to make that entertaining. And I just sat on that for a while and I kept thinking, like, I wanted to do something where it's like showing various sides of me, and maybe I'm like different character versions of like pieces of myself. And it just never really took off for me. But it was one day, have you ever watched any of Nathan Fielder's stuff? He's the guy that does Nathan For You on Comedy Central, and he did the show, The Rehearsal.
Okay, now, yeah.
Yeah. So The Rehearsal was coming out around that time in 2022. And after I'd finished the series, after just watching him and seeing the way that, I mean, he always blends sort of reality television with some sort of kind of manipulative narrative form of filmmaking.
Yeah.
And The Rehearsal really did an amazing job of that. And I just like, it blew my mind. And as I was like one of those shower thoughts came to me, and it's just like, oh, I need to do the documentary about myself and about how I'm bad with women. I was like, watching that show paired with just taking a look at my real life. You know, I was just in a situationship as these things come about, and it was like, oh wow, I'm really like messing this up and just don't know what to do, and I'm just failing miserably, and this is a repeated pattern. And I would say my greatest vulnerability too, like my greatest weakness is that I can't get it together on the romantic relationship front. And so yeah, it was something about like, okay, if I'm going to make a documentary about myself, I think it would be a very interesting angle to pick like the worst thing about me and hone in on that and like explore it deeply and truthfully.
So it's kind of like the true comic inside of you then, right?
Yes,
It's like
yeah.
truly coming out with
Yes. Digging deep into that humiliating angle, yeah.
Right.
So I don't know much about anything. I know a little bit about everything. So is this a documentary? Like, I don't know the categories of filmmaking. So like what is this?
So it's a little of both documentary and narrative. It does contain a lot of footage that is real and straightforward of real situations. And then there is a narrative element where like a good chunk of the film is me giving the audience, who I'm assuming for the most part wouldn't know me watching it. And so I'm giving them context into who I am and like my story. And so I am recreating real events, but obviously some of the shots are archival and of the real thing. Like I have real footage of me in high school that I used to talk about that.
Oh, wow.
I've been making videos since I was like 11 years old. So I have a ton of archival footage to pull from. But then some shots I recreate because I don't have good shots for a very important part of that narrative. So I recreate and some narration explaining what's going on. And then there's also this element of hiring actors or actresses to play people that were real, and I could not possibly get involved in recreating more in-depth portrayals of scenes that did happen in real life. So it's blending those things together. So it's both documentary and narrative.
Nice.
One quick question followed up by a slightly longer question. So first quick question is, for people that are already interested like I am, where can you find this?
You can go to the loneliestboyonearth.com, and you can watch the whole movie for free. It's 2.5 hours. Or you can find me on social media at Cumsmut. CUMSMUT.
Oh.
That's another
Exactly how I
question
thought it was
for
gonna
later on.
Good, let's get into that.
I'll say, yeah, that'll be the next question after this one coming up. So with the documentary that actually just came out, did you get real footage of you like actually going on dates too? Like, were you able to like convince like women like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm making this documentary that this is gonna be a horrible date.
So
Like,
if you watch the movie, it will answer that question more specifically. But I will say yes, no, maybe. Like, it's kind of questionable whether I should really call this a date or anything in there a date. Also, somewhere in the movie, I say something like, it's like my intention. Like, for me, I've in college, leading up to college, I just kind of compulsively did creative stuff. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really think of myself as a creative person or an artist or anything. I just did it. Yeah. And then it wasn't until college where I started to have that sort of self-conscious reflection, like, oh, okay, I see a little bit of like who I am in the world. I am a weird person. I'm creative. I like doing this stuff. And
You're
so
not weird.
just wait. Watch the movie and then come back and tell me that with a straight face. And so anyway, I think there's a certain part in like just reflecting on me in the dating world. Like, of course, I would enjoy going out to eat and doing normal dating activities and stuff, but like, I also feel that the context in which I am in my element and maybe my most confident and having the most fun, and also the experience in which I can provide for another person that is the most fun, is creative collaboration. And so I've found that some of the most interesting meet cute type situations where like I've fallen in love with a woman and tried to progress a relationship either successfully or not, is in this context of creative collaboration. So there's a part in the movie where I'm laying this out, like maybe this is my weird form of a date, inviting women to collaborate with me on this film, whether it is straight up we're shooting a date straight up, or we're doing something else. And I'm telling my old film professor this, and he's laughing at me like, well, maybe this is your problem. You look at something like that as a date, and spot on critique, I would say.
I'm like oddly excited to watch this because like it's hit a point where I've watched enough TV shows that I'm like seeing stuff that came out like 10 years ago, and I'm like, oh, I want to rewatch this. Like, I was just, something popped up on my Netflix, and it was like the show Love. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what was coming to my head, because I'm like, that show was good, but I'm like, it's weird because I know that it's all fake.
Yeah.
Whereas this, I'm like, oh, but it was still interesting to me. Like, I watched the whole series, like, and I watched, there's like an FX show with the girl from Community on it where like horrible relationships, but I'm like, that is the world we live in today. And I think that if people see it and they can recognize it, and then you can try and get better and help other people be in a better relationship.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, while this movie does really focus on me as a particular case study, I do think that there's a bunch of things in the film, particularly just from the conversations I've had with people that have watched it, getting in some very passionate conversations with people who are either like they love it and they love certain things about it, or there's things about the film or that the film reveals about me personally that people really don't like. and getting in these sort of sometimes socio-political, philosophical conversations where people like are very passionate, this is what you're doing wrong. But it's like one of those things like, no, I acknowledge I'm doing something wrong, but that I think is like who I am fundamentally. And that... Yeah, I think what you talked about there, I haven't seen Love, but it sounds like that is a narrative show where, like, it's all acted and scripted and whatnot. Where, yeah, you're right. The fact that this has that documentary side to it that captures the realness and there's real people, that adds a level of intrigue and even danger to it that I think is more captivating. Because I've done mostly narrative stuff. I don't usually do documentaries, but that was one of the things that attracted to me about this project and this idea that also kind of scares me at the same time and has me concerned for my well-being in the future.
So kind of actually taking that and kind of spinning a little bit, business side of it, you said you can go to the website, watch it for free.
Yeah.
So what's the business side of this? Is this kind of like getting yourself out there so people can find you, or is it like to help with the stand-up comedy side? What was because I'm sure this took a shit ton of time.
Yes, it did, yeah. So that's a good question. One thing I will just say about myself, which I don't, I've embraced this. I don't really love this about me. It definitely causes problems for me, and I think that I should work to adjust this, and I think I am doing it. I just haven't sufficiently made adjustments. I am much more concerned with making art than I am monetizing the art. Yeah. I'm really good at making the art, I feel like. I feel very confident in my ability to make it, and I love engaging with it. But when it comes to distributing it and extracting money on it and even getting eyes on it, I feel like I'm not talented at that at all. And I really kind of hate the self-promotion thing. I really just like making the thing and moving on to the next thing. So yeah, I did have the film behind a paywall very briefly, and I sold tickets to the screening, but I mean, I've spent way more money on making the movie than I'm gonna make back. And I'm more concerned with getting eyes on it and people watching it and discussing it than I am making the money off. Because I feel like if overnight I developed a following with no way, like no path to monetizing it immediately, if I suddenly had the following, that would be easy to monetize. Right. Where having money doesn't really necessarily translate into getting an audience. So yeah, I'm a little more concerned with finding my audience than I am about monetizing it. And sometimes I even like that the ways I make money aren't really creative, because it keeps my creative process uninterfered with, because if you're obviously the ideal is to monetize the creativity and the passion. Right. Yeah. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that sometimes, and I'm sure successful artists are great examples of this all the time and say this all the time, but sometimes when you get money involved, it compromises what you can do creatively, especially if you're under a certain production company or record label or anything like that. And so I am very particular about the path in which I want to succeed. And I very much want that sort of independent, autonomous path. Otherwise, I would rather stay unknown and broke.
We completely understand kind of the same aspect too. So there's gonna be three really quick thoughts into what you just said. So one, everyone always asks us, when are you gonna monetize the podcast?
Yeah.
Two things to that. One, it becomes a job. I don't want this to become a job for me.
Yeah.
Two is we just had on someone who's running for DA for New Hanover and Pender County, and now we have you on, and before that we had a creative on. If we tried to ask someone to monetize this, they'd be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Right.
It was like, you got no one for this one and everyone for that one. Can you show me something consistent? And I don't want to do that. So, and I don't think Chris does either. Like, we don't want to be beholden to that.
Yeah,
I feel like you feel very similar to that too.
Exactly. I mean, right there, you're kind of just pointing to the heart of creative integrity, which is the thing I am most serious about defending. And because I think there's a lot of great, well-meaning people who maybe are in that position of I am now your supervisor and helping you monetize this and expand the monetization. And a lot of those things that would help you monetize something creative are antithetical to being good, being of higher quality or being of greater interest or being deeper or meaningful. A lot of times, a lot of the monetization process is we need this to be quicker. We need it to be more watered down so people can understand it. You can't do this. You can't do that. People really hate it when you do this. And it's you can see very quickly how that would ruin, like you just said, you could not do what you did today in terms of your selection of guests.
Exactly.
So, you're preaching to the choir on that one, brother.
It makes me think of in a classic narrative movie genre, the how DC movies have become oh, these are cool movies, but someone else is nah, we need to do it like this or we have to do it like that. And I'm like, but we have source material. Why don't we just make it off the book? And you're like, I have my life. If I change it, then it's not about my life, and you got to make adjustments. And you're like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, especially like you said, DC and even Marvel too. I mean, these are things like, of course, on a budget and production scale, they're very impressive and they're fun to watch. I mean, they're eye candy, really, is what they are. Like sick explosions just every 10 seconds. So, but at the same time, you're right. There's like a focus group, and I've even heard, and I don't know if I'm making this up, but I'm pretty sure I remember hearing this years ago that in the process of making these movies, these blockbusters, they will do test screenings and they'll like hook people up to like heart monitors or like blood pressure things to see how excited they are along the way, and they'll measure that. So it's like they'll adjust the movie to make sure I mean, it's really like social engineering heroin is kind of what it's like, turning their movies into like, no, this needs to excite them from beginning to end, and it needs to be broken down to a science, and we really don't care about the messaging of this thing. We just want to make sure we sell the tickets. Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me at all, because they do that with advertising too.
Yes.
Like, especially for people that are going to spend like a massive budget on like a Super Bowl commercial. It's like, we need to make sure this thing hits. So like their study groups, which used to just be like, hey, let's pull in 20 people off the road and ask them things. Now they're like hooking them up to like brain sensors and stuff. That's crazy.
It's like the old truck commercials. They're like, oh, we have a study group, and they have the people come in, and it's like sitting them in a room, and then a truck rolls in, and there's one with a bear. I'm like, no, it's cool. I like the concept, but no.
I don't know if I've ever seen any of those truck commercials.
I want to say it's Ford.
Probably.
They like let a bear into a room, and the guy had to like run in like into a cage, and the bear just like crawled up and like beat the mess out of a truck.
That one I don't remember, but I do know there was ones that used to have like people come in and they're like, if we said these things, what would you think of?
Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen some of that.
Which oddly leads me to my question. You said you're also a comedian?
Yes, sir.
So how did you get into that?
So I started when I was 17, and leading up to that, I started making videos when I was 11, and it was mostly like sketch comedy stuff on the internet with my friends. So I was very comedy oriented, and I watched a lot of Comedy Central and stand up there, and I was interested in doing it for a while. But my senior year of high school, everyone has to do a senior project, and I wanted to do mine on stand-up comedy. And I was going to be lazy, and I was going to be like, well, let me just pick out a teacher at the school that I think is kind of funny, and then we'll just,
Just roast them.
we'll just talk comedy, and I'll make that my project. But my English teacher, she was great, Miss Jolly, my junior year when I had to select. Do you know Miss Jolly? Or you just like that name?
Did you go to
South
Laney?
Brunswick?
Oh, no.
But Cheryl Jolly might have gone to Laney. I don't know.
I don't know. I had a Miss Jolly at some point in my life.
We'll compare Miss Jollies on Facebook, and we'll see if it's the same one. But anyway, yeah, so she suggested, she's like, so in Wilmington, they have a comedy club. At the time, it was Nut Street, back when Soapbox still existed. And she's like, you need to go to Nut Street. And I can't remember if she knew Timmy Sherrill by name, but I think she put me in contact with him, and I reached out to him and asked him if he'd be my mentor. And so for my senior project, I went all out, and I started stand-up comedy at 18. I documented this is the last documentary I made. It was in 2012. And it was documenting my first 30 days doing stand-up. I was doing it at Nut Street, back when Barzar was the Juggling Gypsy, and then when Whiskey Tango was Brown Coat. So it was like, that was my 3 open mics I would do every week. And it was a whole documentary interviewing comedians. Like, watching that movie, I hate seeing myself in it. It makes me sick. Just hearing my arrogant 17-year-old ass just talking about like, I know comedy, and seeing my terrible sets and jokes and stuff. But what I love about that movie is that it really taps into the nostalgia of that Nut Street scene, those soapbox days where you see me meeting some of my best friends now for the first time on camera, like all my comedian friends. And it's super cool to be able to like go back in time and watch that from that angle. But that's how I got started. And after I finished that documentary, I kept coming here, and I went to college at UNCW, and I only applied there and went there because like I want to continue doing comedy in Wilmington.
Oh, that's neat. That was something that I just recently found out. There's actually a pretty good comedy scene in Wilmington. And because I started, I guess, like last year or so, my wife and I started going to like different comedy things and stuff around town. We're like, it's actually really good here. Like, we never were into comedy before that. And we're like, actually, Wilmington has a pretty decent scene. Yeah. So that was pretty cool for us to find out. And like Dead Crow and everything has always been around for a while. But
yeah. And I mean, yeah, I love it here. I wish I could take you guys back in time with me because, yeah, those, when it was Nut Street, even like when it was the old Dead Crow that used to be, I can't remember what it is now, but it's
where it was
Underfront
downstairs.
Yeah, it used to be Fire Bellies.
Yes.
So yeah, it was like we moved next door after that, and so that old, like, I loved the seedy basement kind of thing. And the new place is beautiful. Like, it's got the big showroom and the beer garden and everything, but there was some sort of energy and camaraderie within the comedy scene, which, like, you know, maybe it's just the burden of comparison here, but like it really had an electricity back then I'm glad you enjoy it now, but I feel it's lost a lot of its life that it had back then, for sure.
I feel like something, like you said, about that basement, like when you walk downstairs, you feel like it's a different energy. Just like when I'm watching TikToks and I see somebody, like you can tell their location. If it's above ground or below ground, it's definitely, the vibe is totally different. And
For sure. There's something about the basement that I think brings out
True though.
brings out that darkness in the comedians that is really necessary for that good belly laughter and the, you know.
So, are you still in the scene now? Are you shifting?
I am. I haven't since the past year. I've really been focusing on finishing the movie, so I've been locked into that. And so I popped in to do stand up every once in a while. But yeah, I haven't been going a lot lately.
Okay.
But I wouldn't say I'm out quite yet.
So 2 questions. So now that the movie's finished and out, what are the hopes and dreams for that movie? And then 2, what's the new project? Because as a creative, I'm sure you already have your wheels turning for the next one.
So I think this would probably be a good place to say this publicly, because I haven't said this publicly yet. But so the movie is really just the first episode of an 8-episode series.
Oh, wow.
So I have 7 other episodes that I'm finishing right now, and they're more than halfway done. So I'm planning on getting those done and starting to release those early 2025. But for now, I'm just letting this movie and this first episode sit on its own and let people think that that's the end, but it's not. So that, and I've been playing around with music. I'm ready to make the next album, but who knows how long that'll take me. But yeah, the series is probably top focus and priority right now.
Oh, for sure. What kind of music?
I make rap. I have a rap character, Cam Boy Smith. Hard to describe. I mean, I feel like it's kind of like it's an alter ego, sort of like a dark shadow persona of myself. But over the years, it's integrated into like it's half that and half the real me writing lyrics. I started it, when in the sketch comedy days, so like it was a character.
Yes.
And it was more of like a simple, just to be funny kind of character. And I was even bad at rapping for my first several songs or albums. And then I started to get, I started to seriously love writing and performing raps. And so like now I'm not bad at it.
Nice.
That's awesome. Have you heard of JT Music?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually sold him an engagement ring back in the day.
Oh, what?
When I worked in jewelry. But yeah, so they moved down. They were next to, it was Bombers. Now it's something else off of.
Yeah.
So I met those guys and went through the studio and stuff. But they kind of similarly, they were doing the raps about video games.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Got huge, which that was crazy. So just kind of that kind of like a mixture made me think of that.
Yeah, and I have a lot of friends and I think connections with people that have also like either worked with JT Music or at least know him. Because isn't Patrick Basquill involved in that?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's someone who like I feel like I don't think I've met him in person, but yeah, just a lot of like mutual connections and stuff that I get asked that a lot if I know them.
Right.
I have no idea who that is. I'm on my side of TikTok, and I was thinking of Wale in his album About Nothing. And I was like, that's what I was thinking. You were like, oh, I rap, and I'm like, that'd be it. Like, I think that those are some good albums from him, and I was like, oh, you're gonna mix some of your stand up with some of your rap, like it's
yeah.
especially if you're doing sketch. So it was just
That was that was like the first thing I thought of too. It's kind of like the mixture of both sides coming together.
Yeah. No, so I mean, sometimes I have songs that are straight up jokes and just silly nonsense, but I also have some of those songs that are like I wouldn't say dead serious, but it's a little bit more like I'm trying to genuinely engage in that art of like spitting those bars and coming up with something clever or interesting or something you can bob your head to. Yeah,
Nice.
I genuinely like that music.
Oh, cool.
I applaud people who can actually string, like a poem is one thing, but stringing a whole set of lyrics together and actually make sense and like put things together. I'm like, nope, I could never do that. I had friends in high school who were like, oh, you should freestyle. I'm like, no. My brain is really quick at processing things, but not in that term.
Yeah, I love to write, and I'm not a freestyle guy. I messed around with it in high school in the courtyards because there was a couple guys out there that like to battle rap.
Yeah.
And I was arrogant enough to be like, yeah, I can freestyle. Just do it shittily. But yeah, no, I'm definitely a meditative writer. Like I like to think and sit on it. And I mean, sometimes some songs I write very quickly and others I take a long time to piece together. But
those are the most fun for me to listen to anyway, because there's a lot of typically a lot of thought behind it. There's a lot of emotion behind it. And then when you have time to actually sit on it, you can actually have the time to just kind of put it all together with the finishing touches, as opposed to there's a few good, even the best of the best when it comes to just kind of freestyling. It's just raw. And that's the best part of it. Right. But if you want something well put together, it's the ones that sit on it and write it multiple times to come up with that.
yes, yeah, the density of the bar, when you have those very complex rhyme schemes or even where you can just layer punchlines and meaning on top of one another. Yeah, you can tell when someone takes their time with their lyrics for sure.
So because I'm that guy. So what do you think about do you know anything, I'm hoping, about the Kendrick and Drake beef?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah, I knew this was coming back.
I have to ask, do you know anything about this? Because I thought my friend knew who Childish Gambino was, and she was like, I have no idea who that is. And I'm like, oh, this hurts my head.
Yeah.
But
I knew of Childish Gambino back when he was doing Derek comedy,
Yeah.
like when he was in the sketch troupe on YouTube.
Yeah.
So yeah,
the old Donald Glover.
yeah, the old Donald Glover. Yeah, there's some good ones from back then.
He's so. All I can think of is randomly his Niglet stand-up scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh Lord,
Got it.
But rap-wise, what do you think of
The Kendrick and Drake beef.
The beef.
Well, I mean, so
For everyone like myself who doesn't know what it is, can you give us a really brief overview of what the hell's going on?
a pop star got in a rap beef with a rapper.
Oh, okay.
It's been 10 years in the making. One person dissed another person, and then they kind of go back and forth. And Kendrick was like, I like you, Drake, but not enough because there's a lot of stuff coming out about you. And so let's talk about this publicly. And they just started pulling bits and pieces and calling each other out.
Yeah, so I've always liked Kendrick, and I've never liked Drake. In fact, there's a scene in the series, not in the movie, of The Loneliest Boy before the Drake and Kendrick beef even happened. It was we shot it back in February, I think, and it's a scene reenactment with me and my ex sitting on the bed, and she's playing Drake on her phone, and I'm just sitting there waiting for her to just stop, and I'm just like, please turn that off. I hate Drake. She's like, what? You don't like any of his songs? I'm like, no, none of them, not even a single feature. She's like, you're an idiot. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm fine with that. And so anyway, that's my opinion on Drake even before the beef. But yeah, when my brother likes Drake, and he was trying to get me to listen to Drake, so I was aware of Drake's last album, the song with J. Cole, where he has that sort of sneak diss on there, and then heard Like That with Kendrick on it. I was like, okay, cool. I didn't love that song, but I was like, that's funny that he would respond like that. But then once Drake put his couple diss tracks out there, and I listened to those, it was maybe the first time I ever was like, okay, I don't really love this, but this is cool hearing Drake do this. But then when Kendrick dropped Euphoria, I was like, oh, shit, dude, it's on. And just the diabolicalness of the way Kendrick released after that, where it was within a week, Drake put out Family Matters, and then what was it, like 20 something minutes after Kendrick stepped on it with Meet the Grams.
Yes.
And then not even 24 hours later dropped Not Like Us, where now he has this popular song that people are banging in clubs about Drake being a pedophile. I mean, it was just a nasty chess game. And it was, and then Drake's Heart Part 6, we put that out, and Kendrick just let him sit with it because it was so bad. Like, did you see any of there's people on like TikTok that were like mocking Drake for it?
Yes.
And they were doing like the guy in the fedora hat impression where they were like, Drake's last diss track was like, you stepped right into my twab, Kendrick.
So the reason I asked this is because, one, supposedly Drake's been dropping songs all summer, and no one's heard any of them because they've just been that bad. And two, Kendrick Lamar is on the level for some people, like lyrically, with like Lil Wayne, where like he'll be saying stuff and there's like double entendres, and there's things like in this whole beef where it's like, oh, it's kind of funny, and then you look at it and you're like, oh, that double entendra's serious, and then you realize that there's a triple entendre, and people are like, what are you talking about? Like the joke about him being a pedophile could be true. I don't know. He hasn't been shown up in court, but like the line was like something about A minor, and like the A minor was a joke because Kendrick is saying that Drake's not actually black, but also is hooking up with minors, and like you keep going, it's like, oh, that's so painful.
That's crazy. I'm gonna have to look into this now. You guys
sure?
sold
Yeah,
me.
you're gonna go down the rabbit hole.
Damn it.
Your whole ride down to see your family is gonna be just like,
I was gonna say, just
there's a
going back and
playlist
forth.
on Spotify that's just like the beef.
Yeah, and there's a good Instagram page / I think podcast. It's called Dissect Podcast.
Oh yeah.
And they like go deep into like they'll explain the history better than him and I could ever do it, and then really pull apart the lyrics and like show you all those double, triple, quadruple entendres. Yeah.
But that's why, like you say, like you sit on some of your raps and some of your lines, and I'm like, those to me are some of the better pieces because someone's thought about it. And it's like, okay, how can I make this a little bit better? How can I tweak this to make it sound right? And I feel like that's what you also did for your movies too.
Yeah.
Is like, hey, I could film this and just drop it, but you took that time to be like, okay, like how can I make this statement get across a little bit better?
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, because I didn't know. I mean, like when I had the shower thought, I had an explosion of many ideas where I could take it. Like it was like I filled out a 20-page Google Doc thing with notes, single space, and and it was just like all these things. Like I could do this, it could go here. If this happens, I can do this with it. Blah, and it was just like, okay, well, this is too much to do, so I got to figure out what I am actually doing. And I immediately started going around just shooting straightforward documentary interviews with friends and family, just talking to them about how they understand me, how they see me, why they think I might be bad with women. And hearing the various perspectives of people in my life on that was really fun, entertaining. And like even getting to sit down with certain women, I had different, like really, like there was one girl I had a crush on in middle school, and I sat down with her. Like she moved out to LA and I just happened to catch her. Her scene in the movie is so great because she's just like, she's even wearing sunglasses and she's so monotone, and she's just like, yeah, I did not like you. I don't know why you think that. It's like years later, I looked up like, yeah, when we were messaging on MySpace, I just thought maybe you might like me a little bit. She's like, no, that was in your head. Like, it's just see me just get like embarrassed on camera like that. It's so fun. But yeah, for the long time, it was this kind of gelatinous idea where I was like, I can keep collecting things, but I don't have enough to know, okay, here's how I can finish. Here's how I can bring it to the finish line. And it wasn't, I had to live some experience. I had to have another situationship bloom and then fall apart. And then in the wake of that, I was like, oh, now I know what I'm doing. This is rich to pull from and integrate. And that happened like around this time last year. And then after that, it was just like turned on. And for 6 months straight, I just was game mode finishing it. I love it when a manic episode comes on like that and I just produce.
I have a quick question real fast. Go watch the movie, but at the end of this first one, do you walk away with a relationship?
I don't want to spoil anything. Look, maybe I do, maybe I don't. You'll find out for yourselves.
But understand there are 7 more movies / episodes.
That was a lead-in.
Yeah. The Whiskey Wisdom podcast exclusive, you know that it's not the end when you get to the end. A lot of people they have strong opinions about the end. It's polarizing.
I'm like, there's answers to all these things, which is kind of sad. But you mentioned situationship multiple times.
Yes.
And as a middle-aged millennial, I guess I am, what is your definition of a situationship?
A married millennial at that.
Well, I went through some of these things in my time, but now I'm just like, oh, what's the definition now?
Yeah.
So I think a situationship is a word to use where what you experienced was like a relationship, but or along the lines or like up against the line of something mimicking the behavior of two people in a relationship, but you don't feel comfortable calling it that because the two of you weren't calling it that, or one of you was very against it while the other one was going for it. So like situationships might be someone that you have multiple casual encounters with, so some of you were seeing continuously, or it might be someone that like, you were wrestling about like, I want to keep seeing you, but I don't want to put labels on it and stuff like that. I think is classic situationship type behavior. Yeah.
For our parents, it's like when someone asks somebody to go steady, and you're like, okay, but you're not boyfriend and girlfriend yet. And in my head, I'm like, oh, there's always an evolution. Because I'm sure, like, I remember meeting my wife's grandparents, and her granddad was like, I asked my wife to go steady in, like, the 60s or something, like, totally ridiculous. And I was like, I forgot that was a thing. I only saw that on Saved by the Bell.
Go steady means slow down, right? Yeah. It means like, let's take things slow. Right. And so I feel like I'm a pedal to the metal kind of guy in like everything I do. And that, I mean, it's like kind of a little keystone in terms of my argument or problem I'm trying to work through on a personal level with this. It's like, is this a thing that I need to acknowledge is wrong with me and fix it and become someone who can ease off the pedal? Or is this just who I am and I have to find someone who's also pedal to the metal?
So outside of the movie itself, did you find some answers within that? Not necessarily that like comes to a conclusion in the movie, but like afterwards it's out, people have seen it, you've heard feedback from it. Have you gained any insight? Like, oh, hey, maybe I should do it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I know. It's and a lot of it I feel like I'd probably have a hard time consciously articulating, but I can tell you how I'm feeling about that sort of side of my world right now. I really kind of feel, and I feel like I've known this for a while, intellectually known this, but not emotionally been on the same page. And I think it's that I'm not in a space to be doing that right now. Like my life is not arranged in a way to where I really can integrate a healthy relationship into it. I think I'm on a path where I'm supposed to be alone, lone wolf in it, until I get to a place where maybe and also I'm completely open to and at peace with the idea that might be my forever path. Like I might not be someone who does get into a relationship like that, and I might walk to my grave by myself, and I'm fine with that. I can see me living a very happy and healthy, fulfilling life like that. I do hope that I'm wrong about that trajectory, and I would love for God or the universe to show me that there is someone for me. But I'm not really interested in forcing it. I've let go of it. I realize that's a horrible idea, and also just taking a look at myself, long hard look in the mirror, and be like, don't do that right now.
That's smart though.
Yeah. I hope so.
That's the plan.
So. 2 questions coming. Two of my last questions. One, have you just done this like internally, just thought through these things, or have you actually like, hey, I should probably go to therapy?
So I have been to therapy, and I even talk about it in the movie. And one of the things I got criticism for, because I don't think I outright like, I don't outright say therapy's bad, no one do it. But my personal experience with it was like, it didn't really work for me. I really found it frustrating. I think my problem is a little, I feel like my problem's a whole lot of nothing. Like, it's a whole lot of like just self-reinforcement. Like, I'm causing the problem with my own thoughts. And I feel like for me and my problem, therapy is a waste of time and money, where this is something I can very easily fix on my own. Okay. But I do think therapy is a great tool, and it is very useful. And I think a lot of people in various situations can get a lot out of therapy. Yes.
Interesting. I just wanted people to be, so we're not getting like bashed, like, oh, he should do this. No, he's done it. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
We've learned from it. We've grown from it.
Yeah. So if you get an anti-therapy messaging out of my movie, that's awesome that you interpreted it like that. I'm happy for you. Didn't mean to do that, but
But
If that's the one thing you walk away from that whole entire movie too, like, you may want to watch it again, probably.
yeah.
Like,
yeah. Well, no, I wouldn't say that it's like the only thing.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. That would be funny though.
Like, if that is the only thing you're getting out of it. I mean,
No, it's one of many problems one could have with it.
So, success-wise, what does that look like for you? Like, for multiple movies, for a lot of people to see it? I know we kind of poked at it a little bit.
Yes, and I can give it to you in 3 words, 3 separate words: prosperity, autonomy, and mastery. I think.
I love that.
Yeah, I prosperity is very self-explanatory. Be able to make a living off of what I'm doing, and the autonomy is kind of circling back to the creative integrity thing. There are certain conditions in which I want to have that prosperity. I do not want to be under someone's thumb who I do not want to be under. And third, mastery is I want to have genuinely earned that prosperity and autonomy. I don't want to cheat it. I don't want to just be successful overnight because I posted a TikTok. I want to be genuinely good at what I do, and so that I deserve whatever success I have. And I feel like that's probably why I am where I am. I don't deserve the success yet, but I do feel that I'm working towards it genuinely.
Yes.
The other person I think of before my next question is like a Jimmy Donaldson, Mr. Beast, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Like the person who he makes a shit ton of money, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't do it for the money. He wants to be the best YouTuber, and that's where the passion is. And he happened to get to where he is because of the passion behind it. It makes me think of something similar to that, right? So it's just kind of like the passion behind it will take me where I need to go.
Yes. Well, don't compare me to Mr. Beast now. I think he's in hot water.
Oh, really? It shows me where I am on my like pop culture.
Yes. He is in a little bit of hot water based on the people he was surrounding himself with.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show, surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah. And to clarify, I'm worse than Mr. Beast. That's what I was saying.
Relationship-wise, not like business-wise.
Right. Oh, yeah. No, he's way better than me business-wise.
So my real actual question then, and also I have no clue what's going on in the world. I mean, I don't know about Drake and Kendrick or Mr. Beast. I'm obviously living in a weird
Drake
hole.
and Kendrick is understandable because that happened in like April, May.
I want to see Kendrick diss Mr. Beast.
Oh, that would
Oh
be
my
fun.
gosh. But yeah, Drake supposedly has been releasing albums, so like that's why it's coming up. And it's also like college football season, so a lot of HBCUs are going to be using Not Like Us because it has a really nice like hook and it sounds great. So that's why it's coming back. But the Mr. Beast thing just happened like less than a month ago.
All right, I'm going to have to do some research now. I've written those down in my notes.
Unfortunately.
Anyway, actual real last question is, if you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
It could be funny. It doesn't always have to be serious here.
In 2023, you will be about to have a relationship with someone, and you should not have it.
Hey, I accept that.
I respect that a lot.
It was funny because I always joke because we always ask this question. Everyone thinks of like, oh, if I go back to my high school years, I'll tell my young self something. I'm like, no, tell yourself something like 6-7 years ago, like help yourself out. And it's usually serious. And I'm like, no, it can be helpful and funny.
Okay, let me revise. I'm going to go the other direction with it. In 2008, you're going to be hanging out with the love of your life. And she's going to lock you in your bedroom with her, and she's going to ask you if there's anything that she can do for you to make you happy. And that is the moment you need to go in and give her a kiss. Maybe don't use either of the things I just said. I regret both of them. But in 2024, you're going to be on the Whiskey and Wisdom podcast and ask if you could go tell your younger self anything. Just be like, you know what, brothers? I got nothing. Whew. Cut that however you want.
We're keeping it all.
Okay.
It's all staying in there.
We might take out a last name here or there, but we'll definitely keep it.
We'll put something fun in there.
Katie and I haven't talked in many years. I'm sure she will never see this.
Never say never.
Hopefully
I've
she
had
doesn't
some
live in
random
Wilmington.
people be like, "Oh, I listen to your podcast." I'm like, "Oh, what did I say?"
That's
But-
usually my next question too when people say it to me. I'm
Yes.
like, oh shit.
But because we're talking silliness and relationship wise, you want to shout out your movie and how can people like follow and learn more about like what's coming next?
Yeah, so The Loneliest Boy on Earth is the movie. You can watch it on theloneliestboyonearth.com. And then if you follow me on social media, I'm the same across all the platforms. I'm on X, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, at CumSmut. That again is CUMSMUT. A lot of people don't like that name and ask me to change it all the time, but
It's been
who I am.
established for so long.
has. And it's not sexual, okay? It's an acronym. It stands for Creative Ubiquitous Masterpieces, Social Marketing Utilizing Technology.
I feel like that.
How long did it
came
take
up-
you to come up with that acronym after you made it?
I sat on it for a while, maybe a couple of years.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you for hopping on.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you everyone for listening. I would love it if you would like, comment, share, subscribe. There's a button down here somewhere that'd be helpful for us. And hopefully we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Cheers.